Welcome back, Red Spotters! I'm not sure that we're here at Red Spotlight Podcast. I'm your host, Alexis Soto, joined by David Francisco. And look, we had tried to get the rest of our cast here with Peter, Alexis, and Kyle to talk about, of course, Obi-Wan Kenobi, the new Disney Plus show, the new Star Wars Disney Plus show. But unfortunately, not everybody's schedules worked out. So in the near future, I would expect sometime next week, we're going to get everybody back on board to see what their opinions are, because there has been, and I'm going to just put all our cards on the table right now, there has been quite a notable shift in tone amongst collectively our entire group with this new Star Wars show than the previous, let's just say, live action Star Wars shows on Disney Plus. So there has been a new development when it comes to that. And look, David and I are here, and we are going to talk about our reactions, kind of a little bit of a review of the first 3 episodes of Obi-Wan Kenobi. That's our show here, along with our initial takeaways of the latest season of Stranger Things, and then whatever else we would like to discuss here on Red Spotlight number 395. Okay, David, got some ground to cover before we get into any of that. First and foremost, I did want to get your opinions on some of the stuff that we had, I believe, touched on last week with Peter Martinez. One of which, and I don't think you really had anything different to say about it, but I did want to get your take on it, regardless of the fact that it is something that you and I have actually been talking about for quite a bit. And that had to do with the fact that Variety confirmed that Disney Plus was moving forward with I guess a new Daredevil show. Again, that's a question we can never really, quite answer, and they never really will at this point. But a new Daredevil show with Charlie Cox is moving forward. They got a bunch of writers, with all due respect, no one had ever heard of. No one really, I think their particular projects, you'd be hard-pressed to find anybody who cares for what those projects were, or if they can name what projects they worked on. Anyway, we went into a long, I think, tangent, and I listened back to that conversation. I feel like we kind of laid it down pretty clearly why, if you're a fan of the Netflix version of Daredevil for those 3 seasons, it is really hard to be excited about anything regarding this new iteration for, well, I think a myriad of reasons. So with all of that in mind, what do you feel, or how do you feel about this news? I think ultimately you and I, look, if Disney Plus wants to do a Daredevil show, fuck yeah, and with Matt and with Charlie Cox, great. I think all fans want that. The problem is, I think what fans want is that same Daredevil show, or if you want to do a different version of it that's not related to it, well, maybe do it in a way where you're not going to immediately draw comparisons, which I'm not even sure if that's possible to not draw comparisons, but it seems like if you're going to do a different take on Daredevil with the same actor, but you're just going to do the Marvel thing you always do, you're only going to invite a lot of heat on you. And I don't think Marvel Studios, for the first time, it seems they're not aware of the backlash that's going to create. And quite frankly, when the news was announced of who was coming on board to write this show, there was already a bit of a backlash. To me, it just sounds pretty insane that, okay, fine, if you don't want to connect it or make it canon, okay, but you don't have the wherewithal or the wisdom to think perhaps it would be beneficial in the very least to bring somebody from that worked on those 3 seasons back for this iteration? No, they didn't. And it seems very clearly that whatever this is going to be is going to feel and look a lot different than what Netflix was doing. And part of me is like, well, yeah, no, duh. But I think it's much more than a tonal shift because of what we've seen coming out of the, Marvel Disney Plus shows. And with all due respect to those shows, I mean, I think they're very well made, and you and I have enjoyed a lot about those Disney Plus shows. Check out our recaps here on Red Spotlight. But there's also been a fair share of issues that make us feel as if, a fair share of reoccurring issues amongst all of the shows. And I think the tweet that kind of put it all in perspective, if you heard that conversation, I know you did last week, that tweet from Kevin Feige where he was like wowing himself with like, wow, you think when you watch Moon Knight, they're going to pull it back. Mm-hmm. And I'm telling you, we're not. That's a paraphrased version of the tweet that Kevin Feige, it was a tweet of an interview that Kevin Feige gave about Moon Knight. Basically like bragging about like how, like, what was the word here? How, visceral and, the action would have been in Moon Knight. Again, Moon Knight, the show that Marvel themselves propped up as like the most violent, installment of their Marvel Cinematic Universe. If he feels that was like, I mean, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be rude by laughing here, but if he feels like that was like, wow, in like the ways that he thinks it was, that's all she wrote, people. The fat lady sung. I mean, the writing's on the wall. I don't know what else you want to say here, but like to me, that's just scratching the surface of the number of different things we can look to and point to say that whatever they're going to come up with is just going to be an inferior version. So, David, your thoughts on this Daredevil news?
You've basically said it all. It's really not going to be the same. Even if he got the same writers, it's really not going to be the same. They're not going to put in that same amount of violence into the show. I don't know if, who knows what they would have talked about in the show if they kind of like push the, like the theme of it or something like that on Daredevil or something. It's just not going to be the same, and it's going to be completely different because of the new writers that they're getting, which, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I want to give them a chance and all that. Maybe they'll just go, fuck it, they're not going to make us do the same. We'll just do our own thing, like kind of, just get little bits and pieces of the Netflix show and try to connect something. Hopefully make a story out of it or something like that. I mean, that's kind of like the best they can do to kind of like make themselves stand out and not have them get judged too harshly on the fans of the show. But even then, though, the way they're gonna direct the whole, like, the cinematography and everything, all that, like, that's still gonna be so different.
I mean, look, you can make an argument that there will be some advantages. I mean, first and foremost, this Daredevil series being on Disney Plus is going to have the budget that Jeff Loeb and Ike Perlmutter could never have allowed the original Netflix shows to have had. I mean, I think a counterpoint to that is, well, a large part of the appeal to the Netflix shows was like their street level, their groundedness in reality. But sometimes, of course, as Peter has mentioned, they really overextended the charitability, shall we say, that fans extended to those shows in terms of, like, being willing to go along with that narrative because, it came across a lot of the times that there was very little money being put in, and the shows sometimes had a tendency to look cheap. Or, when they couldn't spare a few bucks for the actual Kunlun Dragon or whatever it was on Iron Fist, or with the Defenders, which was supposed to be their big, like, crossover event. So it was a lot of, obviously, a collection of different problems there. Yeah, it's like, look, everybody talks about, like, one of the shining, I don't even know what I was trying to say here, what the wrong words here. One of the best parts of the Daredevil show that everyone, like, raves about, that's what I was trying to say. Apologies, my brain has just not been working lately where so many words just come out. I don't know what I'm trying to form here. Fans love the action in these episodes and these shows of Daredevil. You're not going to bring the same choreography team back. So already you lost that. Also, Moon Knight was supposed to be the show where they forget violence, but it was supposed to have had done something interesting with the action, was it not? You would think, right? But I'm sorry, but you and I were saying this in real time, the action on that show just wasn't very memorable.
The last episode, well, I mean, there was an improvement, but there are still some problems with it. And honestly, that's going to be my biggest complaint when we talk about Kenobi. Oh my God. So.
Well, we'll see when we get there, right? As far as Daredevil is concerned, ironically enough, what wasn't an issue before was, well, at least you could say there was a degree of separation with the Netflix shows because they were on Netflix. Well, guess what? They're not on Netflix anymore. They're on Disney Plus. And whatever new Daredevil show you're doing is going to be sitting right there next to the beloved Daredevil show that was produced by Netflix. It's just, it's ridiculous. Like, I'm sorry, it is entirely possible for them to have just said, you know what, let's just bring back as many people as we can as possible. Or maybe bring in some new people. But let's maintain the Daredevil show for the identity that it was. It was a hit. A critical hit on Netflix. The simple thing to have done was, you know what, let's just keep this thing going. Let's bring back the original team. And sure, maybe there are some legal reasons for why that fourth season that they wrote for Netflix, maybe they can't do it that way. Okay, let's just bring them back and have them do a different season 4. But let's actually have a season 4, not a fucking reboot that is like a hollow husk of what the original show was, which is what inevitably is going to feel like to a lot of people. So if Marvel wants to go down this road, fine. But it's just another example of like something they could have done something different to their formula, and yet they do not. And they seem very insistent on everything they do, feeling and looking and just exactly the same. And it's very disappointing, ultimately. So there is that. Anyway, what was next on here? Stranger Things is now on Netflix. Their 4th season. They've dropped the first 7 episodes. I believe the last 2 are basically 4 hours total in length. I think the last 2 episodes are like 2 hours long each. So that's a whole different thing. But the first 7 episodes have dropped. I believe David has seen all of them. I've only seen 3. I have had a difficulty catching up considering I was gone for the weekend. Of all the weekends to leave, it was this weekend, I know, right? But anyway, I've seen the first 3 episodes. David has seen the whole, the bit of it. So what we're going to do is, let's see here. We're going to talk about mainly the first 3 episodes in non-spoiler fashion. So no spoilers at all for this discussion for Stranger Things. We're just going to talk about the season very broadly, as at least so far as in like what I've been exposed to. What I can say is, I love Stranger Things, honestly. And I love these characters so much so that I'm very much willing to I'm willing to go with the idea of extended episodes, an extended ensemble, because I think it's warranted, to be honest with you, with the number of characters that we're dealing with here. What's very different, obviously, with this season is, geographically speaking, we're all over the place. Before, it would be really much isolated to what? Hawkins, the Upside Down, and maybe the occasional trip to a different state or whatever. But no, this is radically different in that in Hawkins, we're missing a couple of players. David Harbour's character, Hopper, was thought to be dead. If you've seen the trailer, you knew. And I'm sorry, I don't think anybody ever thought he was actually dead. I mean, let's just be real about that. Especially when they announced he's coming back. He's in this season. If you've seen the trailer, you know where he is. He's way off the reservation, shall we say so. He's gone, but everybody else thinks he's dead. In the season 3 finale, the Byers alongside 11 moved away, but it was never really established just how far they moved away. I get them leaving Hawkins. They've been through so much, but they went out to California. Now that's a long ways away from Indiana. And so clearly it seems like, correct me if I'm wrong, David, because I never really mentioned, I think about a little over a year has passed in their world, because I want to say that 1985 is the year where the whole Stranger Things season 3 took place. I know for us in real time here, it's been 3 years, believe it or not, since like that season first dropped. But for them, it's been a year. And yeah, so one of the first things just off the bat is just crazy to see how much these kids have aged. And it's a little part of me is like finding it so hard to believe that we're in the 4th season and like they've gone from being in elementary school, now they're in high school.
Mm-hmm.
They're high school kids now. And it's just crazy, man, because they're so big. And now, like, it almost kind of reminds me, like, and you can tell in the tone of this season, it almost reminds me of, like, how in Harry Potter, when the main ensemble was beginning to age, Hermione, Ron, and Harry, when they began to age older, the tone of the entire, franchise was aging up with them. And I feel like, and it's been trending in that direction with Stranger Things. But off the bat, you're already dealing with a lot of death and destruction and gruesomeness. And again, I'm speaking on just the first 3 episodes. But as what Stranger Things does, they really do set the table. And I'm sorry, but like they've never really done anything that, and I know this may be an unpopular opinion, but they've never really done anything where they've lost me on a storyline or on a character. I do think, though, there is a little bit of frustration where there are so many characters now that it has become a tendency as of late where certain characters don't seem to get a lot of attention as they used to. Like, I know with Joyce, she obviously is on the search for Hopper, and I want to see where that goes, and I'm hoping where that goes is going to progress Joy a little bit further. But if anything, there are characters like Will and Jonathan particularly, who as of yet, in the first 3 episodes that I've seen, we're not getting much from them yet, as we've had from other characters like Dustin and Steve and all the group in Hawkins, where literally all of the death and destruction is going down. So it's a lot of storylines. As with Stranger Things, they have at least in the first 3 episodes, have not converged. But when they do, and they always do, it ends up being quite magical. I mean, I feel like from my perspective, again, the first 3 episodes, the pieces have begun to move, but I don't want that to come across as if like it's moved slowly. The first episode very much was great in a way that it just, it sets the table. It gets you in the atmosphere of where things are and how much has changed. But as soon as that first kill happens, things just move and they keep fucking moving. And one of the attributes of this season, of this series, let me just be real with you. And I think you, David, the fact that you finished it, and then I also just talked with Kyle. He told me that once he started watching the show, this new season, he couldn't stop because it's that addicting. So I think that's one of the best attributes of the show, where like it just sucks you in with whatever it's doing. That you can't help yourself, but you just keep watching it until it's done. So, and that's kind of where I am at. Like I what I've seen so far is I'm really liking the stuff with Max, Sadie Sink. I think she's a wonderful actor. I'm not sure who's the standout here quite yet, because again, we're still in that phase. But Vecna might be one of the standouts already. What a great design, and what a creepy, creepy crawly, feeling you get when you see that character. And of course, there are the kills and a lot of things, but you can feel with this season, there's just a lot going on. Mm-hmm. And I guess that could be considered a negative, with so many characters and so many storylines. So yeah, right now I'm very much in the gestating phase of it, because I haven't seen the whole thing. I'm still processing what I'm seeing. But yeah, overall, what would you say is your overview, David, of this season of Stranger Things?
I mean, from what you said, you said that it does seem like a lot, but that's actually kind of, for me, it worked to their benefit. Them separating the entire cast very far apart. That's right. Kind of what keeps the show moving fast for me. That's why I brought it up to you before we recorded. Does it feel slow to you at any point? To me,
it doesn't.
To me, the whole season moves by super fast, especially in the last 2 episodes where they're almost 2 hours long. It never felt like that to me at all. And so that's to its benefit. How they wrote their plot, it's to their benefit, really. But overall, the season, I really enjoyed it. I never really found any of the characters to be useless or what's the word, underutilized throughout the seasons. I thought they were all, I mean, maybe you can probably point it out plot wise, but to me, I loved all the characters. They had great interactions and everything, and so some dynamics that you didn't see last season, you're seeing it now, and they kind of they build it up and everything. Yeah, it's really great. But yeah, overall, this first part of the season is just really, really good. Setting up, not so much setting up, but really building up the relationships between all these other characters, what they've been through and everything. And also Vecna as a villain, he's very interesting.
And that's that in and of itself is interesting, because as far as villains are concerned with Stranger Things, they've been interesting from a certain standpoint, but they're the kind of villains where they're more like entities, or beasts, where it's not so much methodical at all. Vecna seems very much like, a person or a sentient being that is planning things out and very meticulous in what he's doing. And so that in and of itself presents a far more menacing force that these kids have never really faced before. What would you say are, some standout characters. And I love all of them. I mean, I agree with you. Like, just seeing them back, it's like, it's great. But what would you say were some of your favorites?
For sure, Nancy and Dustin. I mean, I honestly think they were like the badasses of the season.
Wow.
And not so much that like they actually like did some badass stuff. It's just, you know, they're figuring out this whole situation, like what's happening to the town. Like it's just, it's so great whenever they like piece something together and, you know, they keep moving it. Like, the group would not be going anywhere if it wasn't for them. You know?
Yeah, it seems that way. I want to say to that point, Dustin has, I think, since season 2, I mean, he's always been like a great character, but like with every season, he kind of becomes like the heart of the show in a way. And you can see just how much like of a great human being he is, and how integral he's become to the group, and how much like of the collective trauma. Because one of the things that stood out to me is very early on in the season, one of his new friends ends up being on the run because wrong place, wrong time situation. And when he formed the first pod of characters that we see form is with, Steven and Robin and Max. And when they come to comfort him, it's actually kind of reassuring because this new character is obviously going through a lot of like torment and he feels he's going crazy. And, Dustin's like, don't worry, dude. Like, we've seen this shit before. We're here to help. And that's just like, and you felt that because like they've gone through so much, and just how like, Dustin is just, the go-getter, right? Like he goes and gets it done and has kind of become like a de facto ringleader in the absence of Mike, who's like, he went away from Hawkins while a lot of this was going down. So no, I agree with you. Like Dustin's very much stepping up to the plate, and maybe he didn't need to because he's always been stepping up. So yeah, I can definitely see that. What else? Oh, and speaking of new characters, we have several of them that are quite entertaining, particularly Eddie in that first episode. Wow, hilarious. And you could totally like buy how Mike and Dustin particularly like grew fondly of him. Also we have, and I don't know his name yet because we haven't seen too much, but Jonathan's friend in California, that dude just cracks me up so hard.
That
honestly.
actor, like honestly, when he first showed up on screen, I was like, that dude's wearing the same clothes as any other movie he's been on.
Right? I mean, I'm sure he's typecasted at this point, but he just does it so. I think I saw him in Booksmart do the same character.
Yeah, basically.
He's just like, man. There was a conversation he had with one of my other favorite characters on the show, Murray, who gets a lot of screen time with with Joyce this season, but he comes back, and he's visiting them at their new house in California. And obviously, like, they're covering up, like, what they really want to do with the rest of them that are there. But it gets to a point where Jonathan's friend starts, like, talking to Murray. And Murray very much is, like he's I don't want to call him elitist, but he's very much like an intellectual. And so it's just hilarious to see how that look on his face when he reacts to when the friend is asking him, particularly, this just happened in episode 3. So, like, do Eskimos still live in igloos? And I just, like, couldn't. And by the way, this entire dinner sequence, he and Jonathan and Suka are so fucking high. Like, it's not even I mean, it is funny because Jonathan completely misses what happens because, like, Joyce announces she's leaving on a, like, quote-unquote business trip. And so she turns to him, and he's like, what just happened? And he looks so fucking high. And it's like, and Murray pieces it together pretty quickly, but I think Joyce just seems so oblivious, like, what's going on. So it's that shit was so hilarious to me. So yeah, as far as like new character wise, there is that. There's also the new jock guy that we get with what's his name? Lucas. And look, it's an interesting angle where we start off with Lucas, right? Because, and I can totally look, in a way it kind of is relatable. I mean, it's not cool that he turns his back on his friends and everything, but you can understand, like, you at least sympathize that, he wants to get a new start, a fresh start with him being on the basketball team. There is an opportunity for him to climb up the social hierarchy, which is something to an extent he's always wanted to do so. But how can I put this? I've seen 3 episodes again. By the 3rd episode, the things that crowd is already engaging with, I'm sorry to say, is something that, in my experience, you could have seen coming a mile away.
Mm-hmm.
It is not surprising in the least. The kind of behavior that group is engaging with, because by the time murders start happening and they feel personally insulted, they engage in their own, shall we say, vigilantism, and they go rough up people because they view themselves as the saviors of the community. The idea that they would do that is not at all surprising in the least, and I'm not going to say disappointed, but I was really curious to see how long it would take for Lucas to kind of clue into it. And I was really nervous for Lucas to become a little bit brainwashed by them. No spoilers, but I'm very thankful that storyline did not go the way that I thought it would. Just 3 episodes in, and Lucas a lot smarter and a lot quicker than these guys he's hanging around with could even begin to pick up on. So very happy with that particular storyline, and happy in the sense that I'm not disappointed with it so far. So there's that. Also very crushing to see. Again, this is in the trailer. 11 is just being fucking tortured left and right. And I'm sorry, but there seems to be no justification for it. You don't see Jonathan or Will being treated like shit the way she is. And look, it's very difficult because I think this is the first time we're seeing 11 in school, and she hasn't had very much of it. And so on some level, you do get the sense that it is just plain old-fashioned elitism that plays into why certain, let's just say, certain assholes would just glue in and take advantage of that. But, and correct me if I'm wrong, David, but it just seems to me that 11 and the kind of bullying that she's had to endure seems to be on a completely different level than any of the bullying that Mike or his friends faced in the early years of Stranger Things, right? Fucking 11 is tormented here, left and right. They make, I think she pretty much makes it clear that her father's dead, and she gets laughed for it. And the diorama she makes for a school presentation, again, all in the trailer, gets smashed. I mean, you feel pretty fucking bad for her.
No, yeah, for sure. But I mean,
it's just
high school, maybe.
It is.
That's why she's getting it more harshly. So I don't know.
No, for sure. But it's very much new for her to go through all of that. She's never had to endure that, especially without her powers, because she can't fight back the way that she'd want to. And then when she does, it goes up a bit too far there. So, what other surprises shall we say on some of the characters and how they've come along would you say stuck out to you or surprised you? Or, you know... Oh, it's funny to see Erica I love when Dustin and Mike in the first episode, they brought in Erica, Lucas's little sister. Her introduction to that group was, man, I was laughing so hard. She's a surprise, because I know like in season 2 she was barely there, but she was kind of the character like, okay, why are you here? But then like when she came in season 3 and she was like, she really proved her worth. And again, I think part of the arc for her in season 3 was like her realization that she was kind of a nerd at the end of the day, because she was like a big history buff. But whoa, I did not know how big of a nerd she was, because holy shit, she really did prove her worth there. So that was a very engaging sequence, and I loved it. Anything else that stood out to you as far as characters that was surprising or interesting?
No, nothing else. Everyone else is just sort of the same. I mean, I still love them all and all that, but you know, it's still great dynamics, especially with what's that one guy? Those two that work at the video store.
Yes, we have Steve,
yeah,
and then Robin.
Steve and Robin, yeah, their dynamic is so good. Like right off the bat, it's moving quickly. They're like going back and forth and everything. They're great.
Yeah.
My one tiny complaint of the season, they're really forcing a relationship with these two characters, and I don't like it.
Right.
So, I mean, I won't say who it is. You'll know like right away when you see it. But it's just
force. Okay. I'm trying to think. They're forcing a relationship between these two characters. Okay, I'll just be blunt with you. These two characters, are one of them female?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's not what I was thinking of.
Okay.
Okay. See, now this is something new that I don't think I picked up on. I'm going to.
You'll notice it more as the episodes go on. Like they're really trying to like build it up to something. And I mean, I did hear a theory, and if it's true, then I might be okay with it next season. But for now, I really don't like it.
Okay. We've had all kinds of relationships on this show in the past. Obviously, we've had Mike and 11. We've had Lucas and Max. Steve and Nancy, but then also after that, Jonathan and Nancy. At the end of season 3, it very much looked as if like Hopper and Joyce were about to become an item, and then obviously tragedy struck. I am really curious to get your thoughts on it, because there's something they do with a character this season that on some level feels like it came out of left field. But I think back in season 3, there was something very noticeably... There was some noticeable friction with this character toward another character. But I didn't necessarily take it as what it's coming across pretty clearly to me in this season. And I don't know if you picked up on this, or maybe this is just me here, but what have you made about Will Byers so far this season?
I'm bad with names. Which is that one?
So he's Joyce's younger son, the one that was missing the first season, with the bowl cut, basically. Yeah. He has a modified version of the bowl cut, but my impression seems to be there is something very different with him going on than anybody else. And from what I can gather, no one has picked up on it.
Yeah, no one in the group has picked up on it, but I'm curious as to where it's gonna go exactly. I mean, that one I'm mostly just interested because it seems like they're trying to build it up slowly, or I don't know, maybe they're just gonna ignore it at the end.
Yeah.
Not ignore it at the end, but like, nothing's gonna really come up with it in a way. I don't know how to explain it without spoiling it, but
it's very much all internal. And like before this season, it's never been so direct, but I feel like from the moment you see Will, you see something there that the show I don't think was like very heavily leaning, and it involves Mike and 11. Again, I feel it's pretty obvious when you see it. In season 3, there was that noticeably friction wise scene I was referring to was back in season 3. I don't know if you recall. But at the beginning of the season, Will very much was upset at everybody, particularly Mike, because he felt like this was their summer vacation. He wanted to do all the things that he loved to do, but nobody else seemed interested in because they all kind of moved on and had other interests, girls being one of them, with Lucas and with Mike. And Will didn't necessarily share that interest, and he still wanted to do the things that they all did when they were younger. The problem was Will missed out on those last few years because of all of the torture and trauma that happened on with seasons 1 and 2 of Stranger Things. And so my interpretation of it was, and why he was lashing out at Mike, was that he was just kind of sad that he missed out on the last bit of his childhood, whereas everybody else has just kind of moved on. And I wasn't picking up on anything else, but it seems pretty clearly that there was a lot more going on there than he was showing. And in a lot of ways, what I'm talking about right now hasn't been said. You just see it. And I'm wondering when that's going to drop. Because it's very clearly different. And I also, before, just personally, I don't know, Mike lately, I know he's very preoccupied with 11, clearly, because he loves her and is his girlfriend, but like, I do feel bad for Will because like Mike was Will's best friend, and Mike barely gives a shit about him anymore.
Yeah.
No, seriously, it's like, forget about whatever he feels on the inside as far as like what else they could be, but as far as friends are concerned, like he's right, they used to be best friends, but they don't really talk anymore. Like they're in the same room and they always will be friendly, but like this is like Mike went to the end of the earth to find Will back in season 1 and also in season 2. And now it's like there's something there that it's the opposite of like there's something there that wasn't there before. Like something's obviously just gone wrong, and Mike doesn't seem to care. Like Will like brings it up to him early on in the season, hey, what the hell, man? Like you don't talk to me really much anymore. And Mike was like, well, I'm sorry, but you should have reached out more maybe. Okay, all right. Anyway, those are my rambling thoughts so far of this season. I'm enjoying it so far. It seems most people are enjoying it so far. Kyle, we didn't talk any specifics, but he seemed to really enjoy it. So at some point we'll get more people around and we'll have a proper review for the first part of Stranger Things 4. So with all that being said, let's go ahead and move on to the other giant in the Disney, in the streaming world, shall we say, this past week, and that was Obi-Wan Kenobi, the limited series of the Star Wars variety, which featured the return of Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan Kenobi, dropped on Disney Plus this past weekend. And it is no secret that for our group here on Red Spotlight, we're kind of weirdos in that we don't really like The Mandalorian, and we don't like anything related with Jon Favreau and Star Wars at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we may be among the only people on the face of the planet that maybe share that view. And hey, that's fine with us. But because of all of that, because of how lackluster the live-action Star Wars shows have been on Disney Plus, quite frankly, because of how discouraging a lot of the projects that have been greenlit and which ones have not, the overall direction of Lucasfilm just very much seemed to be like, you know what Favreau and Filoni are doing with The Mandalorian, that's working, and let's just do that flavor with everything Star Wars. That mentality really turns, or at least to me, it turned me off so much that, and I think I speak for all of us, for the most part, I had some very, very low expectations for Kenobi. My expectation was it would annoy me deeply because the other live-action Star Wars shows have annoyed me deeply. So, and I did say, well, the one wild card in this equation is Jon Favreau himself is not involved at all in the show. He's not producing. And more to the point, he's not writing. And we saw the first 3 episodes that are currently on Disney Plus. Oh my God, does it show? Like, oh my God. It just makes me think, like, imagine if we just took Jon Favreau out of the equation of The Mandalorian. Maybe we might have liked it. Who knows? But I think to me, there's a lot of things to talk about Kenobi. But we have to just start off with the writing. And I'm sorry, but like, it kind of really just shows you in every way imaginable. If Jon Favreau's involved with anything Star Wars going forward, fuck all with that. I don't care. I don't, because this is the first live-action Star Wars show without his involvement. And when I say it shows, like, oh my God, this is good. Oh my God, there are like characters that are alive and real. Actors are giving wonderful performances, and they're having like conversations with each other that are meaningful to their characters and move the story forward. That doesn't feel like you're watching a gameplay of a video game. Like that's not just a big fetch quest. That's not just all surface level. That's not just all vapid and meaningless and dumb or stupid or, just lazy and all. I mean, again, this is the guy that literally ripped off Robot Chicken for his, like, the stinger at the end of The Mandalorian Season 2 where Boba Fett comes in and kills Bib Fortuna and then, like, sits on the throne. That's the level of writing we were operating at here. And off the bat, you can tell that Deborah Chow, who is our main director here, and from what I can tell, one of our main writers on this show, has a sense to her that for this character, this main character here, but then all the characters that are involved here, because look, speaking very broadly on these first 3 episodes, there are things that happen that if you just read off the page of a script, you'd be thinking to yourself, oh no. Eek, this sounds a little bit like fan fiction here. This seems a bit contrived, no pun intended, but this seems a bit forced. And there are things that happen in these episodes that you think to yourself, if Favreau had written it Oh no. Oh no. That being said, there are a lot of things that happen in these episodes that if I had read the script, I would be convinced they would have pissed me the fuck off. And somehow I'm sitting here surprised and honestly kind of stunned because just about everything that has transpired, I've really liked. Like, oh my God, I can't believe I like this.
Mm-hmm.
And the only conclusion I can come at it is like, Jon Favreau sucks. He fucking sucks because you just take him out of the equation. And again, I mean, I'm not ready to say that like what we've seen out of Obi-Wan Kenobi, the show, is like amazing or sensational. I think there are amazing moments, but overall, is it the best show in the world? I don't think so. But as far as like Star Wars and what I want out of Star Wars stories, and if you're already going to be playing with legacy characters, and if you're already going to be like retroactively like, well, technically Obi-Wan and Darth Vader did meet between episodes 3 and 4. Again, I don't like that idea, but if you're going to go ahead and fuck with that, I'm sorry to say, or I'm not sorry, I'm actually kind of happy to say, this is kind of the way you would do it, where it, dare I say, feels kind of natural, the way things and certain characters have kind of lined up with each other. And I'm kind of surprised to say that. So, off the bat, I love the whole vibe of it. I love the slow pacedness of it for the first episode especially. Ewan McGregor. I don't think... Look, I know that for people who were older than we were, obviously, when the prequels came out, like, there was no redeeming quality to the prequels. But Ewan McGregor was always, I would say, one of the redeeming aspects of it. And I love the fact that he gets to be a main character in his own story. And there is so much about this version of Obi-Wan Kenobi in this era, 10 years into the Empire, so beaten down, so demoralized, so desensitized, so stripped away from like the Obi-Wan Kenobi that we once knew. There are shades of the performance. Again, Ewan does a great job of it, but there are shades of the Obi-Wan that we know in there. First of all, it's kind of amazing that we get to see him play that character again. It's so good to hear his voice. It's so good to see him. But where the character is in this place and time, automatically you're like, you know what? Maybe this is a story worth telling because this Obi-Wan is so different from the one that we see in Revenge of the Sith, and so different than the one that we see in A New Hope. And so there is a turn here that we may need to see. And so off the bat, we get a good justification for what this story and this show may in fact be needed for us to see. And then, and I'm sorry to say, for people who hate The Last Jedi, it has a lot of Last Jedi vibes with the arc that Luke has in that movie. You know, there are some similarities there. I mean, in the first episode alone, Obi-Wan says, oh, by the way, there will be spoilers. I didn't mention that. But in the first episode, Obi-Wan says that the time of the Jedi has passed. And that's very much not the Obi-Wan that we saw in A New Hope. So, and look, I think Deborah Chow understands, unlike Jon Favreau. I know this sounds mean, I don't care, but it's true. So much can be said with just a look of a face than dialogue can ever provide. And so much of this first episode especially, or maybe honestly in all three of the episodes, there's so much that's said on Ewan's face than words could ever really like do justice. The melancholy, that's a great word to describe the mood that we're in with Obi-Wan. I love it. I love that it wasn't so I know the action does come into the forefront later on, But for the first episode, we weren't really preoccupied with that at all. And we were just here for Obi-Wan. And that looks great. And I don't know if anyone noticed, but like, obviously we're on Tatooine. Did you notice that there was like, it actually looked like a populated area? Whereas in Book of Boba Fett, like, it's kind of cartoonish how there was like no one there at the end of the of the season in Tatooine. Just, I wanted to put that out there. Yeah, it's great. And one of the big surprises to me was the involvement of Leia. I didn't see it coming. And that actor, I mean, look, this is why, and I know, I'm sorry to say, Kathy, but I think you're wrong with like this insistence of de-aging or using like AI or VFX to just like, you know, digitally crap out lookalikes of the original trilogy characters. But obviously it wouldn't make sense in this case when you have a 10-year-old Leia Organa. But this is why you get actors, right? To play younger or older versions of these characters, because in every way did she feel like Leia. The spunkness, the sassiness, and also the wit is there. That just feels so like Carrie Fisher's performance in A New Hope. I thought it was honestly kind of perfect for me. And I loved her interactions with Bail Organa. Bail Organa is always a character that I've liked, but I've always like been sad that we didn't get more of him. I know, like, and he's in Rogue One, but he's not really in Rogue One. And that's a movie he really should have been in. You know, do you have Jimmy Smits and you don't use him more often? And I think easily in episode 1, this is the most like emotion Jimmy Smits has made me feel in any of his appearances in Star Wars. And it's a glimpse of a relationship we've never seen before. And how the bond that exists between Leia and Bail. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, David, you've actually dabbled in some of the novels, or you know of some of the story that involves Leia and then maybe also Bail, and maybe you are more exposed to that relationship. But it was just I was just really happy to see them and the feels that I was feeling, and I was just surprised again and again throughout the episode, because I was like, wow, this is making me like Star Wars again. Wow, this is great. Anyway. Feel free to respond to any of it if you want to go ahead and talk about like the whole Leia stuff and then go back to the Obi-Wan stuff. But anyway, the whole point of it is she gets kidnapped. Yes. And that's the perfect justification to get him off Tatooine. Yeah. If there was maybe the only justification to get him off that rock. And even then, well, we'll get to that moment. But so far, all of the story mechanizations to get the pieces moving, I bought completely. And I couldn't believe that I did. Wow. Great opening to the series. But David, your thoughts?
No, yeah. I'm really loving this show so far. All of the actors are so great in this. So for McGregor, Obi-Wan, I love where his character is at. Obviously, this is where he would be at. Just kind of giving up on life, basically, and only hope for the best in Luke. But yeah, what was you mentioned, like, you know, the less dialogue, basically, the better in some of these actors, and especially true for Kenobi. Just those scenes where he's just kind of looking off into the distance, like he know what he's thinking about all the time and everything. Honestly, my favorite moment was when he was deciding to leave Tatooine at the end of episode 1. I was just kind of like, dang, he's kind of giving up a lot in that moment. And I love the shot though, where he like kind of pulls his rope to the side and you see the lightsaber. I was like, dang, that's really cool. Like it really is kind of like a sheriff going back, putting the badge back on and doing the job again and everything. It was so good. And then and like you mentioned, like the reason why he leaves Tatooine, Leia gets kidnapped, I really love that too. I never expected that they would put Leia in this show. And when they did, when they showed her, I thought we were just gonna we weren't gonna see her face at all. Like we should just gonna be on the side or something, like in the distance, like how they did with Luke. And I was like, that's probably what they're gonna do. But no, she we see her, we see her interacting with stuff, and that little girl, the actress, she's great. Oh my gosh, like every scene with her, she's just so funny and she's so adorable to watch. And I really like how they're building up the relationship between her and Obi-Wan. Like right from the beginning, you can tell, like, oh my gosh, she's like going to influence her a lot into becoming the rebel leader that she becomes. And it's so great. And especially like those little things going on around them that like convinces her. In the latest episode, there's that woman who saves him from the Empire, guides them to like a tunnel and everything. And when she when Leia asked her, it's like, is it hard to pretend or something like that? I can't remember what the exact question was, but I was like, oh my gosh, like she's seeing this person literally trying to like give up her life just to save them for a cause. And it's like, oh my gosh, that's why she does it for others, to the people that actually saved her in this moment. Probably
so much is going on, right, in a lot of different areas, but with the character of Leia, so much is happening for her that are going to form and shape who she becomes, and you're seeing it right here, and they're doing it in a way that doesn't feel forced or contrived or dumb. It actually feels very organic,
and it makes sense for her because she just seems to like care about everyone. You saw, what was his name? The little mole creature. I can't remember his name, but
Trek?
Was it Trek?
Something like that?
Yeah, I thought it was Freck or something. I don't know.
Freck, maybe, yeah.
Yeah. Him, Obi-Wan's kind of like skeptical about him, but she's just kind of like, who cares? Like, he seems like a nice guy, and he does seem friendly, like right away. But then you see the Empire flag thing on his truck and all that. And like he does betray them and everything, but she just has this friendliness towards others and all that. And so when it gives back to her, that kind of influences her a lot. He also mentioned her relationship with Bail, and I have read the novels and all that. And Bloodline is the only one that's like really focused on Leia. And whenever she mentions her dad, it's mostly just kind of like how much of a great dad he was and all that, and how she was inspired by him to keep up the rebel cause and all that. But that is for sure like the first time for me, at least, that like we're seeing like the building blocks of their relationship and how much he also influences her in her life. So it was great, really great to see that, especially with the knowledge of how he affected her in the novel Bloodline. It's a good book, honestly. I think you guys should listen or read it.
Yeah, and one underrated aspect, and I'm not even sure if most people caught this, but like, I'm not even sure if Ryan Johnson caught this, but I love, one of my favorite looks for Leia is her look in The Last Jedi. And if you notice, the colors of the look that she wears is very much inspired by Bail Organa and the robes he was wearing as a senator. So I love that bit. And as far as like the stuff that we're getting with Leia and Kenobi, like, it makes you think, like, okay, well, we're seeing them together and they're forming a relationship of sorts, and it's just so good. It feels like a bond, as we've been saying, that's gonna stay in Leia's mind forever. And it makes you think back to other moments in Star Wars, like one that's that sticks out to mind, and people have already been catching this, like when Luke comes to her rescue in A New Hope, and when he says, "I'm here with Ben Kenobi," and then she jumps up and says Ben Kenobi, like as if she knows who he's talking about. Although, of course, there's no line of dialogue to confirm any of that in the film, or that may not even been the intent in the filmmaking when that happened. But there was a sense of familiarity to there. And so now we know why she jumped up, and now we know for sure that she did know him personally. And then how much of an impression he must have made on her to name her own son Ben.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's always been a curious choice. Like, when it was announced that Adam Driver, Kylo Ren, or not, it wasn't announced, it was not in the movie, but that his name was Ben Solo in The Force Awakens. It did seem quite curious to me why either Han or Leia, who really had little to no interaction with Obi-Wan, or Ben Kenobi, if you will, would name their son Ben, unless, like, it was Luke's idea, I guess, or whatever, but maybe in a way, this helps explain why.
Yeah. No, yeah, I thought that was weird too. Like, I heard, you hear the name Ben and you're just kind of like, after Obi-Wan? Like, it really was weird in the movie. But I really do like that you can't connect it with the show now as to why. That's cool.
Yeah. And it makes sense, honestly.
Yeah, for sure.
And the interactions that they have, honestly. Like in that last episode you just mentioned, when they were in that drive, after they ward off the suspicions of the stormtroopers. And I love, honestly, really do adore how quick Leia is. Because she can pick up on, she reads people more, I think, than anybody else. Like, first of all, in the first episode, when she, like, destroyed her piece of shit cousin, that was hilarious. But then also in a more, somber and tender moment with Obi-Wan in that last episode, where she realized, you knew my mother. You were talking about her.
And when she asked him if he was her dad, oh my god, I was kind of like, just say yes.
Yeah, literally, right? Yeah, because you can't tell her who her father is, because that would not be fun. But it also brought in some other insight into Obi-Wan, because
I was about to say that.
Right? It's like, he talks about people who you never, I think it never really occurred to us that Obi-Wan had a family, And in a way, it is a strange connection, because the Jedi were kidnappers in a way, right? Like,
basically,
like they really took in Force-sensitive children and they brought him into a cult. And here's Leia, who, ironic enough, this is a very instance in which she found herself to be kidnapped, but she too was a child who was separated from her birth family and was given to some other people. And so there's just kind of like this weird, like, connection that the two share in that moment. And I thought that was just brilliantly delivered by those two actors. I loved it so much.
You know what I hope they would do? So, in Return of the Jedi, when Luke asked Leia, like, what does she remember about her parents? And she says she gets, like, images of her mom. Yeah. But in Revenge of the Sith, like, she was literally just born when Padme died. And so it's like, how the fuck could you remember that? And so I think it would be kind of interesting if, like, somehow, I don't know, some Force stuff, Obi-Wan puts, like, images of her into...
It could be that, too.
That'd be kind of cool.
I was thinking along the same lines as that as well, because... let me just bring up some other story stuff. I know in a comic book, and this is how the Force works, or at least with Leia. There was a comic book, a canon story, that happened briefly after the events of Return of the Jedi, where Leia went to Naboo, and she was in the hangar where, Darth Maul first encountered Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. But then, like, you see in that scene in the comic that she felt a presence there that it was very familiar to her, and she could feel, and you see images in the comic strip of Padme. Yes, in Jedi, she says that there were images of her mom, that she died when she was very young. Obviously, of course, during the filming of Return of the Jedi, that's not... it wasn't written with the intent that she was talking about when she was literally just born. And again, that's another one of the examples of how George just kind of like broke a lot of the canon with his prequels. Minor as it may be, but it's still one of those things that just, they don't quite fit all together. But actually, David, I think with this exchange that Leia and Ben had here, it may do a lot more than people realize to bridge that gap, because Ben is talking about a father, a mother, and a brother he believes he had. But how would he really know that for sure, right? Because, let me see here. Not in every situation. I know the ages of the kids when they're taken from their families does vary. I know that in the Clone Wars series, we saw toddler Ahsoka, I think, be taken in. And I know that the Sith, Palpatine, through the help of Cad Bane. Well, I'm not even sure if you even saw these episodes, so I don't know. Well, there was a Clone Wars arc where, Palpatine enlisted the services of Cad Bane to kidnap Force-sensitive babies. Mm-hmm. I'm just this instant trying to remember if the Jedi also do take in babies, or if it's just toddlers. I'm going to assume it's just toddlers, because they don't want to, take care of babies, I would think, unless they're in danger. But even then, how much do people remember about, when they're toddlers? Maybe very little, maybe, if that. So, yeah, we'll see. I mean, my rationalization for that line that Leia says in Jedi was she was Force sensitive.
Yeah, that could be.
We'll just explain it like that.
Yeah, that could be it too. But I mean, I don't know. I think it would be kind of cool if, one last parting gift from Obi-Wan was that he shows her an image of her mom somehow.
Which, that is, it's funny because they can do that, because we saw Luke do that with Grogu in Book of Boba Fett. And again, this is a great parallel with how Jon Favreau, I don't think, gets it with Star Wars, and other people do, because if they were to do that in this show, David, that would, I think, be the proper way of doing it. Whereas, hilariously enough, in Luke's circumstance, he just randomly brought up traumatic memories to Grogu's head for no fucking reason. Unprompted at that. So dumb, so bad. Yeah. I'm sorry. I mean, if that doesn't really show you the difference between the shows, I mean, oh my god. Just anyway, you were saying.
Okay. I need to bring up something stupid my sister said when we were watching episode 3.
Okay.
So that scene, they're walking in that desert, and at one point Obi-Wan stops and he sees a guy in the distance. He's in a robe. He slowly turns and looks at him and everything. Turns out it's just a mirage or something.
Uh-huh.
So as the guy was turning, my sister goes, "Is that?" And I'm like, "Wait, hold on. Maybe they'll get a close-up of him or something. I don't know. I was telling her to stop." And she goes, "Who'd you think that was?" I'm like, "Anakin." It's who else? She goes, "Oh, I was thinking Jar Jar." And I'm like, "How the fuck did you get that?"
Wait.
I'm not kidding you.
What the Wait, what? She thought it was Jar Jar?
It was Jar Jar.
In a robe? In a Jedi robe?
I don't know how she got it. I swear. I thought she was going to say, "Oh my gosh, is that Qui-" I thought she was going to say Qui-Gon. She got Qui-Gon, but I thought Anakin. But she brings up Jar Jar, and I'm like, how the fuck did you get Jar Jar from that guy? It was clearly human.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was a hilarious thing that happened.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, that was clearly Hayden Christensen. I don't know. I mean, it clearly was a... Yeah, it's part of the great things that we're seeing with the story, right, is that, you know, Obi-Wan's fucking tormented as shit for all these years. Like, the guilt of killing, you know, someone he considered to be his brother, and also the guilt of failing that person, and eating away at him as well. That's a big part of the story that I'm really enjoying myself. So, as you were saying.
Well... Yeah, honestly, it's just everything I loved about it. Obi-Wan's character, Obi-Wan and Leia's relationship. The villain, what's her name? Reva? Or the third sister?
The third sister, yes.
Yeah. In the first 2 episodes, she just seemed kind of intense to me. Like, I just feel like...
Maybe a bit too much?
Yeah, just a bit too much. Like,
tone it down a little bit.
She did tone it down a bit in the third episode, which I liked. But other than that, I don't really have much of a problem with her. I'm kind of curious as to what exactly she wants. Because, like, I mean, it seems like she wants to kill Obi-Wan, but I feel like they're going to throw a twist at us. And, you know, maybe she's going to be like, help me or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's pretty obvious at this point. I don't know if you feel this way. Reva is so obsessed with Obi-Wan that it's more than just about her wanting to ascend to the Grand Inquisitor position. I think the Inquisitors and Vader, I think they convince themselves that's what she's after. But clearly there's something more to it that hasn't been revealed yet. And I'm thinking that this third sister might be one of those younglings we saw flee from Order 66, which opened this series.
Oh, when I saw that scene, I was literally like, wait, can we get a show about those kids instead? Instead of Obi-Wan?
Right.
Because I was like, oh man, that'd be kind of interesting. Like, they ran away, they're trying to stick together through the seasons. I don't know. Do that, Disney. But yeah, that's one complaint I have of the show. The other one, there's some shit choreography here. Oh my god, I'm sorry. But that scene where Leia gets kidnapped, that was so stupid. Oh my gosh. There was one part where Leia, for one thing, that little girl cannot run fast. She just shorten the scenes. It's fine if these episodes are like 30 minutes long or something. I don't know. But like, she can't run that fast. But I mean, there was that one scene where she goes like under a tree branch. You know, she's short, goes right through it. But the person behind her trying to get her bumps into it as if she just hit a wall or something, or as if she didn't see it. And it just looked so ridiculous. And it was a small stick too. I feel like she could have just like pulled theirs, pushed theirs to the side or something. And then they were tripping over stuff that like it just didn't really seem like they could have done so. I don't know.
They kind of look like clowns trying to catch a little girl, which wasn't all that difficult. There was this one moment in that sequence that you were talking about where I think one of the guys literally could have grabbed her, but I think you see he stops himself for some weird reason and gives her a chance to run, and then she runs, and I'm like, okay, dude,
yeah,
what? Like,
and then in the second episode when they were in that city, literally Leia's like right next to Obi-Wan, but it's like it's as if he just kind of goes, oh, like he's like, I don't know, he doesn't grab her, but she's literally right next to him, and I can see how she could get away with in that scene, because there are a lot of people and he doesn't want to maybe draw a lot of attention, so he can't run. So like, you know, that one's okay, I guess, but that one little shot though, that kind of messed it up. And then in this third episode, I mean, this is a lot in the action scenes for sure, but like there are moments where they're just kind of like standing there waiting for the hit. And the moment where Obi-Wan was like shooting the stormtroopers, this one guy, he just kind of looked like he was scared, like going like, oh my god, and he like turns around and then he just gets shot by Obi-Wan and everything. Like it was there's just some really bad stuff. The only one that I would say was okay was the fight between Obi-Wan and Vader that happened, but everything else though, oh my gosh, it's really really bad. Honestly, I can't.
Now, I don't think it was particularly good as far as choreography wise is concerned. What I would say does interest me from a character standpoint is Obi-Wan's reluctance to use his lightsaber and his reluctance to rely on the Force in those scenes. Because you'd think that Obi-Wan Kenobi would be able to handle himself quite easily with fucking stormtroopers. And I think when you do see him confront Vader, it becomes a bit all too clear why that was the case. Besides him not wanting to be detected, obviously. Man, is Obi a bit rusty.
Mm-hmm.
He really was so committed to not living the life of a Jedi. The man just wasn't keeping up with it. Clearly, I mean, he kept his lightsaber underground for, I would assume, a decade. So he doesn't use it quite often. I mean, I'm not sure he needs it, but the man just wasn't what he used to be. And so from that standpoint, I'm interested about that. To me, and I don't know if it's just the limitations of doing a live action Star Wars show, I can't think of a single instance in which any of the action in, between Mando, Boba Fett, or Obi-Wan Kenobi, I can't think of a single instance where that was memorable. Action is concerned, I mean.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
And in some cases, it wasn't particularly good. It's like, to me, what I think is one of the worst, choreographed fights is the Mando versus Moff Gideon duel in the last episode of Mando, season 2. Because it seems there was a lot of built up for that, and then what that was pretty pathetic, if you ask me. And then what we're seeing here is interesting. I guess we'll just get to it. I'll say, as far as the lightsaber duel between Vader and Kenobi, in some strange way, I think that's exactly what it needed to be. Because it pretty much showed that Kenobi is not in the right mindset and really out of balance in a lot of ways. And it marks, it was just a complete defeat.
Mm-hmm.
If other forces hadn't intervened, that would have been the end of Obi-Wan Kenobi. And my impression was that, look, from a creative standpoint, they have to walk a fine line, transitioning from the prequel era trilogy of, lightsaber fighting to the original trilogy of lightsaber fighting. That's fine and all. But the way that I see it is Vader was very much going easy on Kenobi there. And Obi clearly was out of his depth, and that's why he just kept running away. Because he knew. Also, and I also saw a tweet about this, his refusal to engage in that duel with Vader very much kind of works symbolically as him refusing to accept this is what he's become and just walking away from it entirely. So if you want to read it that way, you can. But what a crushing and devastating defeat. And what I loved about that whole sequence was how much of a horror movie villain they made Vader look out to be. Him using the Force to choke the shit out of people. I think this is the first time we see him use the Force to snap a neck.
Mm-hmm.
That was intense.
That was one thing my sister and I said. People always say Darth Vader is the scariest villain ever and all that. But when I was watching, and I saw the original movies pretty young, but I was never really afraid of Darth Vader. I was just kind of this is a badass villain. That's all I saw him as. But this is the first time where I was like, oh my gosh, what the fuck is he gonna do?
Holy
he
shit,
wants Obi-Wan.
Right?
How is he gonna do it? Not even in Rogue One, I wasn't scared. I was just this is a badass character. So that was something I really liked about that scene.
Yeah. And then also how sadistic he was. I love the, I mean, let me just be, I want to step back here. The idea that Kenobi and Vader came across each other's paths and actually ignited their lightsabers, on paper, on principle, that's not something that I think would ever have worked for me, but somehow it did, and I'm happy about that.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the the lines work here too is, Kenobi says, what have you become? I am what you made me. Great, wonderful moment.
Mm-hmm.
And how sadistic. You can tell how much Vader has thought about this, where he literally ignited flames around him and threw Kenobi at him to kind of harking back to the flames that Vader found himself surrounded by when Kenobi cut off his limbs. It's just wow. It was just a wow moment, really all around. There are other aspects, of course, of the show, but Vader, really well done. I loved the armor. To me, I think it's an accomplishment that we have characters that we're playing with here, Obi-Wan, Darth Vader, and Leia, that in many ways is really dangerous to involve all of them together with a new storyline. That dangerous in that it almost certainly will change the perception of how you see things. And because most of the time that's a change for the worse, I don't welcome it. But in this case, so far from what I'm seeing, it does recontextualize things that you'll see in other Star Wars media, further down the timeline, but in a good way. So at the moment, I'm really loving this show.
Mm-hmm. One thing though, the Grand Inquisitor, he's dead.
Yeah. What?
I know. Yeah.
When that happened, I'm like, huh? What?
I mean,
I'm sorry. Look, I don't mean to weave in the whole bullshit MCU canon Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. thing, but nothing that has happened in the MCU movies has ever negated the existence of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I maintain that. This is exactly what people think the MCU movies have done, quote unquote, to negate Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s existence, because presumably what we do see here is the Grand Inquisitor, the very same Grand Inquisitor that is the main antagonist of the first season of Star Wars Rebels, which takes place approximately 5 years later than the story is taking place, is dead. So what the fuck? Because that seemingly, I think he's alive.
I mean, maybe.
Because how else do you explain this?
Yeah, I don't know. Cloning.
I mean, that's not out of the question, but it also would be pretty unrealistic considering other factors at play. I'm thinking what happened is they needed a way to get the Grand Inquisitor out of the way. But you can't obviously kill him because that just breaks the canon. And you're not going to break the canon of Rebels. I mean, you can break little things in canon, but character dying before we know they appear later on doesn't seem to mix all that well. I think what other people have floated out there, and I think what they will do, is Fennec Shand. Look how she got brought back. Mm-hmm. They just added in robot guts or whatever. And I guess you could do the same thing for Grand Inquisitor.
I mean, yeah, for sure. There are still ways, but as of right now,
yeah, that's probably dead. Nobody seems to care, right? Mm-hmm. What have you made of the performances from the Grand Inquisitor? I thought it was a really great opening scene in episode 1, and I was surprised by that because I was really dreading the look of the makeup that they had for the Grand Inquisitor, I didn't think it looked all that great, but I guess I rolled with it. But I thought it was a great opening sequence.
No, yeah, I remember disliking the makeup of it too in the beginning. But after a while though, his performance was really selling me on it. I didn't really mind it as much. But yeah, he was really good. Especially like that one guy, the one that was supposed to take his place.
The fifth brother?
Yeah. I really liked his performance too. Again, I think everyone's doing a really good job. The other one is Third Sister, who again is just a little bit of intense for me. But other than that, everyone seems to be killing it.
Literally. Yeah. I just it's. There was a Star Wars thing that came out today, and it featured Obi-Wan and Darth Vader, and I actually liked what I saw, and I never imagined in my wildest dreams, number one, that I'd see it, number two, that I'd enjoy it, and I think that is a win-win altogether. And it's a shame Deborah Chow isn't in charge of everything Star Wars, that I will say. Because, man, it's just day and night. With, you compare this to the other, live-action Star Wars shows, get out of here, man. Literally. Anyway, is that all we have?
I think so, yeah.
Can't wait to see what's next. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up there. As I said, next time we'll round up the rest of our panel and get their thoughts of Kenobi and more. Stay under our spotlight for all of our wonderful content here. And until next time, we will see you. Bye-bye.
Bye.